It's been 3 years since Michael disappeared, and every single night since then, I've dreamed of the last time I saw his face. It was a Sunday morning, and he was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and staring out the window like something was far away in his mind. I remember asking him what he was thinking about, and he just smiled at me in that soft, tired way of his and said, "Nothing important." That same day, he told me he was going to the hardware store to pick up a few things. He never came back. At first, I thought maybe he'd gotten into a car accident. I called his phone dozens of times until it went straight to voicemail. I called the police, reported him missing, hand-plastered his face on every social media platform I could think of. Weeks passed. No calls, no texts, no sign of him. The police eventually told me they believed he might have just walked away from his life. They said it happens more often than people think. But I knew my husband. Michael wasn't the type of man to abandon everything. Or at least that's what I believed back then. Grief settled into my bones like a cold I couldn't shake. Our house felt too big and too quiet without him. I'd find his shirts in the closet, still smelling faintly of his cologne, and I'd collapse to the floor clutching them like they could somehow pull him back to me. People told me to move on. Friends stopped visiting after a while because I couldn't talk about anything else. Even my own family started looking at me with pity, like I was pathetic for still holding on. Then 2 weeks ago, everything changed. I was in a small town about 4 hours from home, on my way back from visiting my sister. I was starving, so I stopped at this little diner off the highway. The place smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. I slid into a booth, ordered a sandwich, and tried to shake off the weird feeling that had been clinging to me all morning. I don't know why, but the moment I walked into that diner, my stomach twisted like I was about to see something I shouldn't, and then I did. He was standing behind the counter, wearing a white apron, his hair a little longer, his face a little thinner, but it was him. Michael, my Michael. He was alive, breathing, laughing with a waitress, like he hadn't disappeared and shattered my life. But something was wrong. He wasn't using his real name. I know because I watched him refill a man's coffee, and the guy said, "Thanks, Tom." Michael Tom smiled and said, "Anytime, buddy." My hands went cold, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would echo through the diner. I wanted to run to him, to grab him, to scream, "Where have you been?" But I froze. He looked happy, relaxed, like this was his real life now. I kept staring, my eyes locked on him like I was trying to burn holes through his skin. And that's when he saw me. His smile faded. His hand stopped mid-pour. Our eyes met, and I swear I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Not shock, not guilt, fear, pure unfiltered fear. He glanced at the door, then back at me like he was calculating something. And then, without a word, he disappeared into the back of the diner. I sat there, my sandwich untouched, my fingers trembling around the coffee cup. A few minutes later, a different man came to the counter and told me Michael had gone home sick. I tried to ask where he lived, but the guy just shrugged and said, "I don't know, lady." But I knew they were lying. The whole drive home, my mind spun in circles. Why was he here? Why had he changed his name? And most of all, why did he look so terrified when he saw me? That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the look on his face over and over. It wasn't the look of someone caught in an awkward situation. It was the look of someone who knew that seeing me again was dangerous. Not for him, for me. I couldn't stop myself. The next morning, I drove back to that diner. I sat in my car across the street for hours, waiting. Eventually, I saw him step out the back door, glancing over his shoulder like he was checking for someone. He wasn't alone. There was a man with him, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black baseball cap pulled low over his face. They spoke briefly, and then Michael got into a beat-up blue pickup truck. The other man climbed in too. I followed them. I don't know what I was expecting. Some crappy apartment. Maybe, but they drove out of town, down winding back roads surrounded by thick forest. My hands were sweating so badly on the steering wheel I could barely hold on. They finally pulled into a property surrounded by a tall wooden fence. I parked far enough away that I wouldn't be seen, but close enough to watch. Through a gap in the boards, I saw them carry boxes inside a large weathered house. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, even though it was the middle of the day. Then I saw something that made my stomach lurch. Michael stepped back outside and locked the door from the outside. Like whatever or whoever was inside needed to be kept in, I must have made some kind of noise because the man in the baseball cap turned his head, and I swear he looked directly at me, even from that distance. I ducked down in my seat, heart racing, terrified he'd come for me right then and there. When I finally dared to look again, they were gone. I drove home with my mind screaming. I had so many questions, but one thought kept repeating over and over in my head. Michael wasn't just living under a new name. He was hiding from something, or helping hide something. And whatever it was, I was afraid it might already know I was looking. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the man who looked exactly like my husband, but in my head, it wasn't him. It couldn't be. My husband was dead to me the day he disappeared, and yet the way he laughed, the way his hands moved when he talked, even the little wrinkle between his eyebrows, when he was thinking hard, it was all the same. The only difference was the name, Daniel Myers, a name that didn't exist in my life before. I stared at my phone, scrolling through social media and searching every possible lead. Daniel Myers wasn't an easy man to find. The charity group he was with had almost no online presence. I found one blurry photo of him handing food to children, but that was it. No personal accounts, no tagged pictures, nothing. As if he had been dropped into the world a few months ago with no past. And maybe that's exactly what happened. Morning came and I made the decision to see him again. Not to confront him, not yet, but to watch, to study him. If it wasn't him, I'd be able to tell. If it was then, I needed to know why. The following week, I signed up as a volunteer for the same charity. My heart pounded when they handed me the schedule. His name was there, Daniel Myers, Saturday, 10 a.m. My hands shook. As I traced the letters, I don't know what I expected. Maybe some rational explanation, maybe some kind of relief, but instead, I felt this cold, hollow fear in my chest. Saturday came too slowly. When it finally arrived, I almost didn't go. I stood in front of my mirror, trying to convince myself that this was a bad idea. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. It eats at you until you have no choice but to feed it. So I went. The venue was a community hall, busy with people setting up tables, organizing food and arranging chairs. And there he was, standing at the far end, wearing a faded blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, laughing with another volunteer. I froze. Every part of him was my husband. His voice, God, his voice, it hit me like a knife in the chest. Same tone, same rhythm, same little laugh after a joke. I must have been staring too hard because suddenly he looked my way. Our eyes met. I swear I stopped breathing. For a second I thought he recognized me, but then nothing. Just a polite smile, the kind you give to strangers. He walked toward me holding a clipboard. "Hey, you must be new." "I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand. My whole body was trembling. I forced a smile and shook his hand. "Yeah, first day. So I'm Emily." The name felt foreign in my mouth. I didn't want him to know who I was, not yet. His handshake was firm, warm, familiar. My mind screamed, it's him, but he didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just smiled, handed me a list and started explaining what I needed to do. The rest of the day was torture. I watched him interact with everyone, remembering all the little things from our marriage. The way he organized things, the way he encouraged people. At one point, he brushed his hair back the same exact way he used to when we were cooking together in our old kitchen. My chest ached so badly I thought I might faint. During the lunch break, I sat alone, pretending to scroll through my phone, when I overheard two other volunteers talking about him. "Daniel's amazing, isn't he? Can you believe he's only been in town for like 7 months?" One said. "Yeah, and he's so private. Never talks about where he came from. I think he said he used to live overseas, but that's it," the other replied. 7 months. My husband disappeared 9 months ago. The timeline fit almost too perfectly. By the time the event ended, my brain was spinning. I wanted to scream at him, grab him, demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I left quietly, clutching my bag like it was the only thing keeping me upright. That night, I dug through old emails, bank statements, anything that could connect him to this Daniel Myers identity. And then I found it. A withdrawal from our joint account made 2 days after he vanished, from an ATM in a small coastal town 3 states away. I had never noticed it before. That town was only an hour's drive from where Daniel Myers supposedly appeared 7 months ago. It wasn't a coincidence. The next Saturday, I volunteered again. This time I was determined to get closer. I asked questions, small ones. Where he grew up, how he ended up here. He gave vague answers, always smiling, always polite, but never revealing too much. Then something strange happened. While we were carrying boxes together, his sleeve slid down and I saw it. A scar, a thin, jagged scar just above his wrist. The exact same one my husband got from a fishing accident 2 years before he disappeared. My heart stopped. I wanted to scream, I knew it, but I stayed silent. That scar was my proof. I left that day knowing 2 things. 1, Daniel Myers was my husband. And 2, he was hiding something so big that he had to erase his entire identity to keep it secret. But here's the thing. Once you know a truth like that, you can't just walk away. You need answers. And I was going to get mine, no matter the cost. I remember standing frozen in that room, staring at the man I had once shared a life with, the man I had married, the man who had vanished without a trace 2 years ago. Only now he wasn't my husband. He was someone else entirely. His hair was longer, his face thinner, his eyes colder. He looked at me as if I were just another stranger, and that hurt more than anything. I could barely breathe, my heart pounding in my ears. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp, almost dangerous. He didn't sound confused to see me. He sounded cornered. I stammered something about finding his wallet, about thinking he might be hurt. His eyes flickered, calculating. He took a step closer, and instinctively I stepped back until my shoulders hit the wall. The air between us was tense, heavy, and I realized this wasn't the reunion I had imagined during the endless nights I had cried myself to sleep. This was something else, something I didn't understand yet. I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. Someone was watching us from the hallway. A woman, tall, pale, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a faded green dress, like something from a thrift store, and her expression was unreadable. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "Is everything okay?" she asked, but her tone was flat, almost rehearsed. My husband, no, the man, turned to her and gave the smallest nod. That's when I realized she wasn't his wife or his girlfriend. She was something else. The way she positioned herself, slightly between us, like she was protecting him, made my skin crawl. I forced myself to speak. "I'm his wife," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to make sure she heard it. There was a long silence and then both of them laughed. Not the kind of laugh you share when something is genuinely funny. This was low, hollow, almost mocking. I felt something cold wash over me. "You need to leave," the woman said, stepping closer. Now, I should have left. Every instinct told me to walk away, to get in my car, to drive and never look back. But I had spent 2 years searching for him. 2 years without answers. And now I was staring at him, alive and breathing, pretending to be someone else. I wasn't going anywhere until I understood why. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key, dangling it between his fingers. "You really shouldn't have come here," he said quietly, his eyes locking onto mine in a way that felt almost hypnotic. "You've made things worse for both of us." I didn't know what he meant, but my pulse was racing. I took a small step forward, and that's when the woman suddenly moved, fast and deliberate, grabbing my arm with a grip that felt stronger than it should have been. Her nails dug into my skin as she pulled me toward the door. My husband didn't stop her. In fact, he turned away like he couldn't bear to look at me. "Wait, please, just tell me why you left," I cried out. But he didn't. The woman shoved me out into the hallway and slammed. The door shut so hard that the sound echoed down the corridor. I stood there, shaking, tears blurring my vision. I was too stunned to even knock again. I walked out of the building, my legs moving on their own. But when I reached the street, I stopped and looked up at the window of his apartment. A shadow moved behind the curtain, and for a split second, I thought I saw another face watching me from inside. It wasn't his. It was someone else. Someone smiling. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. I replayed every second of our encounter in my mind, trying to make sense of it. Why had he looked at me like that? Who was that woman? And who was the person in the window? My phone buzzed at 3:14 a.m., and when I saw the number, my stomach flipped. It was unknown. I almost didn't answer, but my curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I whispered. There was silence for a few seconds, and then I heard breathing. Slow, steady breathing. "You need to stop looking for him," a woman's voice said. I recognized it instantly. It was her. "If you don't, you won't make it to the end of the month." My chest tightened. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said something that froze the blood in my veins. "He's not your husband anymore. He belongs to us now." Before I could say another word, the line went dead. I sat there clutching the phone, my mind spinning. Belongs to us. Who was us? And why did it sound less like a relationship and more like a possession? The next morning, I went back to the building, but when I got there, the apartment was empty, completely. No furniture. No trace that anyone had lived there. Even the name on the doorbell was gone. I asked the landlord about the man who lived there, but he said there had never been anyone by that name or the new name my husband was using. He looked at me like I was crazy. I walked away feeling more lost than ever. But as I reached my car, I saw something taped to the windshield. It was a single Polaroid photo. My hands shook as I pulled it off. It was a picture of me, taken from outside my bedroom window. The caption scrawled underneath in messy handwriting read, "Last warning." My blood went cold. After the frantic chaos of that night, the entire street was shrouded in an almost unnatural silence. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence, but a heavy, suffocating one, as if the air itself had thickened. My hands were still trembling, and I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or the dread that was now burrowing deep into my chest. The sirens had stopped. The police tape was already fluttering weakly in the wind, and the neighbors had retreated inside, their faces pale, their eyes avoiding mine. They all knew something happened, but none of them wanted to know the truth. I sat on the front step, staring at the cracks in the pavement, each one looking like an open wound in the earth. My phone buzzed, breaking the oppressive stillness. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, disturbingly calm, as if whoever was speaking was in no hurry at all. "You shouldn't have run," the voice said. My stomach dropped. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear faint static, and then, "You already know who I am. And you know what's next." The line went dead. For a moment, I just sat there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, until I realized I was breathing too fast, my chest rising and falling like I'd just sprinted for miles. I knew that voice. It was impossible, but I knew it. It was him, the one who had been declared dead 2 years ago, the man they swore they buried after the fire. My hands instinctively reached for the small locked box I kept hidden under the floorboards inside the living room. I tore it open and pulled out the photograph, burnt around the edges but still clear, enough to see his face. The same cold eyes, the same slight smirk, the same man who had ruined everything. But it wasn't just the call that rattled me, it was what I noticed in the background of the photo now, something I had never seen before. Behind him, barely visible through the smoke, was another figure, taller, standing perfectly still, and wearing my clothes, my pulse hammered in my ears. I didn't remember ever being there. I didn't remember that moment at all. That's when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, but I found myself walking toward it anyway, as if pulled by invisible strings. I cracked the door open, just enough to see outside. No one. The street was empty. But at my feet, someone had left a small blood-stained envelope. My name was written on it in thick, shaky letters. I tore it open with trembling fingers, and inside was a single Polaroid. It was me standing in my kitchen, taken just hours ago, while I was in the living room. My eyes darted to the kitchen doorway, and there, in the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the window, I saw a shadow move. Not away from me, but closer. My voice caught in my throat. "Who's there?" No answer, just the sound of bare feet stepping across the tile. The figure emerged, and my mind could barely process what I was seeing. It was me, same face, same clothes, same trembling hands. But the eyes were empty, as if whoever or whatever this was had been hollowed out and replaced with something else entirely. "Oh, you're not supposed to be here yet," it said in my voice, tilting its head slightly. "But since you've seen me, I guess it's time." And then it lunged forward too fast for me to react, its cold hands wrapping around my face as everything went black. When I woke up, I wasn't in my house anymore. I was standing on the street, staring at my own front door. Through the window I could see me, moving inside, smiling, laughing, living, and I realized, with a bone-deep horror, that I was no longer the one in there. I was outside, watching, trapped, and whoever or whatever had taken. My place didn't plan on giving it back.